Alright, today I've got like 30 mugs I gotta put handles on. So I'm just gonna show you how I go about doing that. I'm gonna thumb off a few and then put handles on all of them. Um, I do a mix. I do a mix of extruding my handles and pulling. It always just depends on the time crunch. Pulling takes a lot more time. It really does. It takes like maybe 4 or 5 times as much time. But the handles, they look nice. They do. Extruding, you can make really, really nice handles. Um, I usually do. I usually use my own dies. Um, I've made a couple here, and this is the one I'm going to be using today. It's just kind of like a mixture of circles. Um, I use just like kind of like a Dremel. I work at a dental lab, so I have access to a handpiece, and actually I have a handpiece at home too. But um, these are just holes, just different sized holes drilled, and it makes a really nice texture for your handles. The glaze kind of breaks and pools inside of the little divots here. It looks really nice. If you have just an extruder and you got like an extruder with a bunch of handles or a bunch of dies, you probably have some dies like this. These are supposed to be handle dies. I don't like them, not at all. They're pretty much useless. A handle extruded out of this just looks bad. So I don't I don't use that. It's garbage. Anyway, so I'll start off extruding, and I'll extrude some handles out of this little die here. Um, I have a bunch of clay here, probably like 5 pounds. I don't know. Well, I have a lot of mugs to put handles on, so I'll probably just extrude like a bunch of handles, and then I'll pull some too. I've got like a little chunk of clay here that I'll pull some handles with, and I'll show you how to do that. But first, we will extrude them. If you have an extruder, you know that most dies are like 4 position, and then you have like a knockout, so that you're only extruding one die at a time. So I have this, like, it's thin. It's almost like a credit card thickness, and I just line it up with the largest die there that I want to use, and then I put my block out over it so that I'm just extruding this one size of die. So I will go ahead and start doing that. All extruders are different. This one is like a cheap one made in Canada, and I can't recommend it enough. It was like $225 or something, which is like half the price of one that you could buy just here in America. I don't know why they're so overpriced. It's literally tube metal welded to tube metal. I don't know, this is probably $10 worth of metal, maybe 20. But if you're gonna spend money on $20 of metal, you might as well spend $200 on $20 worth of metal than $400 or $500 worth. If you just search eBay for clay extruder, you'll find him. I don't remember what his username is, but just look for listing from Canada, and I think it's 300 Canadian, which was about $225 American. So anyway, I'm just gonna set my dies here. I'm just setting it so that just the one handle form is being extruded. Kind of looks like that when it's all put together. Oop. This is pretty much all I use my extruder for, is handles so far. And then I've got a like a tray die, and I do use this. I use it for glaze test tiles, and I use it for making like little sponge holders, and it works really well. I don't know. It seems like cheating because you're just extruding like a big tube of this, but works good. No one else knows that, right? Still has that handmade quality. I just make sure that everything is lined up well, nothing's interfering. I'm going to tighten down my extruder, and then I'll put the block out in. There we go. Alright, so when I load these, I just cut like a big square out of like a block of clay that kind of roughly fits inside. Jam it down. And then the other little pieces that come along with cutting out that bigger piece, I just push them in too. Sometimes you get a little like a bubble or two, but most of the time it's fine. Tends to compress itself out. Alright, so let's see how this works. Usually like the first couple inches are just garbage. They've got like little bubbles and stuff in them. Actually, this one's not too bad, but I will scrap that, recycle it. But basically you just pull this down and beautiful handles come out. I mean, look at that. That right there, that's some beautiful handle. Basically I just chop it into like 5-inch sections, and then I'll use that. Any extra little chunks and stuff, they get recycled. I recycle all my clay. It's kind of like a hodgepodge of different clays, but it works pretty good. My reclaim is pretty much just as nice as my regular clay, so must be doing something right? Anyway, I usually use wooden bats. Most of mine are in use right now, but I'll use like little wooden bats, and I'll kind of line them all up on the wooden bats. They're pretty much just the right size for, like, if I just cut them this way, they're just the right size, so I'll go ahead and do that. And I just I'll take the long piece here, set it on my bat, and I'll just pinch off the excess. And then I'll extrude another big long chunk. I spent half the day today kind of cleaning up this outside area here. Um, my clay operation has kind of outgrown its tiny little shed here. I've got about a 6x6 area in here where I do all my clay work, and it's just so tiny. So I'm gonna try to kind of build off of the side of my house is like right here. I'm just gonna try to like build like a little covered area off the side of my house where I can store like glaze and clay in the summer. Of course, you can't store clay outside in the winter; it'll freeze and be useless. But yeah, exciting. You know, when I first started doing clay and stuff, it was like in a pursuit of doing something with my hands. I mean, I make dentures for a living, and I've always kind of wanted to always do something with my hands, and my work fulfills some of that, but working with clay is like on a whole nother level. And so now that I'm at the point where I'm making way more stuff than I could possibly give away, I need just a little bit more room. So we got this kind of area out here. I'm gonna fence it in so my dogs can also hang out there while I'm doing clay. They don't really like being alone at night when I'm out here, so a little spot for them and a little spot for me. I think it'll work out pretty good. I think my wife is probably tired of having a bunch of clay stuff in the house, so be able to get some of that stuff outside, and yeah, should work out good. Alright, I've got 15 handles here extruded. I'll extrude the rest later. But I will now show you how to pull handles. And pulled handles are really, I don't know, they're kind of like the best, I guess. They're well compressed, they look nice, they taper, so that's kind of what you don't get from an extruded handle, is a tapered handle. And you can tell on the final product. I'll go grab one and show you the difference. Alright, so this is the extruded handles. Let me see if I can get a little bit closer here. This is the extruded handle. You can see how the glaze kind of pools inside of the ridges there, and this is the die that I'm extruding right now. Glaze pools in the inside of the divots and breaks over the tall surfaces. And then this is a pulled handle. Sorry, it's like a really bad example, but you can see it's wider up here where the base of the handle is on this picture, and it tapers down to a finer point down here. But yeah, so I don't know. The difference between them isn't that great. I really like both, but like I said, the pulled handles take a lot more time. So if I'm busy, I will just I'll extrude handles, and they look really nice, so I'm not going to complain. So for pulling handles, let me set up the other camera. Alright, so what you need for a pulled handle is you need like a little container of water and a little block of clay. For this kind of stuff, I don't really wedge the clay or anything. There's no benefit to doing that. Probably if you wedged it, you could run into issues with the spiral nature of the clay, and pulling on that when you get your handle done. It could, you know, adjust itself in the firing and try to remember what it was like before, which would kind of twist it a little bit or untwist it. So I just start with like a little block of clay. This is maybe 1 pound, and this is good enough for several handles. I just kind of round out and get it. I'm just gonna roll it into kind of like a carrot shape, where it's big on one end and it tapers down. It's not super important to do this first, but it just helps. So why not? It just takes a minute to kind of taper it down into a carrot shape. So once it's in a carrot shape, grab your water and then something to put your handles on. I use the back of a bat. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. Alright, so I dip this into the water, get it nice and wet, get my hand wet, and then you just pull. And I don't want to hear any jokes about this, okay? When you're pulling, the end might come off, that's fine. You need more water if that happens. And all you do is you just pull. You want to pull all the way to the end. You want to pull from the top all the way down to the bottom, like this. And you just keep doing that, and then turn 180 degrees the handle, like this. If you just pull from one side, you're going to get a handle that is thick on one side, like thick on this side, and thin on this side. If you rotate it every few pulls, you'll get a handle that is even. And then what I like to do is right now it's like to the point where I could just cut a handle off of this and it would be fine. But what I like to do is I use my thumb here and I'll put a little indent on the side here. And you're going to see that when I turn this around. See this kind of like indented area here? And I'll do that on both sides. I will pull it down and make sure to keep it well lubricated. You can dip the handle in there, you can dip your hand in there, both is great. But once I've got the divot on both sides, like that, I'll continue pulling just normal. And then once you've got yourself a handle that's ready to use, and that's up to you, how thick or thin you want your handles to be. I tend to keep them about the thickness of my mug. So, you know, we got some mugs here that are ready to go, and I wanna have them about the thickness here, and then tapering down to a smaller thickness. So my extruder dies are about this. This is about between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. So yeah. Just kind of when you're working with clay and stuff, just try to keep everything like it naturally. If you look at something and it looks good, naturally that's the thickness that you like, right? And if you're blind to that, the way something looks when it's good, you're going to have a harder time. If you need help with that, I suggest looking at examples like online. If you have a favorite artist or something, look at what, pay attention to the details of how they their finished product looks, right? You'll notice that everything is cohesive. The thickness is the same throughout. It's very consistent, right? And the same can be said for handles. Handles will be the same thickness as the body that it's attached to. And if you put a giant thick handle on a thinner mug, it'll actually warp it in the firing. The thick handle will pull against the wall because it's shrinking unevenly with the rest of the mug. So as much as you can, try to keep things even. And you'll see that if you look at your favorite artist's work. This is kind of the stuff that where you're looking at something and you just, everything looks right, but you can't put your finger on it. Try to put your finger on it. Try to see what's different about this person's work than something else, right? What's different about it than your work? And if you do that, you'll start noticing all these little things like with the handle, it tapers and it looks nice. It's the same thickness as the rest of the mug or whatever. The picture, the walls are the same thickness as the handle. You'll start noticing these little things if you just take a second and analyze it. Make a little list even, write it down. What's different about this person's work that I'm really attracted to? If it's the glaze or something like that, I mean, what are you going to do? You can always contact an artist about the glaze they're using or whatever, but when it comes to the actual forms that they're using, there's no substitution for that. So be observant. Try to, when you're looking at something, try to figure out what is it about this thing that triggers me. What about it is special? And if you do that, you'll take a shortcut to what you actually like. So anyway, this is pulling handles. As you can see, I've got 4 handles done, almost about 5, and I had about 20 of them done in the same amount of time with an extruder. They pulled handles look nicer. There's no way around that. If you're pulling a handle and you accidentally grab too much of a chunk and you get like a little divot here, and you know that that's just going to pull off, you can push back into the base here and kind of even the clay out. Yeah, this is just oh, that's not good. Yeah, keep a handle on your clay too. Don't let it fall into the water. All right. So I'm just gonna finish out this last. I'm gonna do 2 more. Let's get a full bat full of clay here. And now that it's all wet, it's so hard to hold on to. But we'll do our best, right? That's all you can do. Some people, they will pull like a small ball like this, kind of like that size, and then attach it to their mug and then pull it off the mug. That always looks super nice, but it takes forever. Oh my god. If you're doing art mugs or something like that, where you're sgraffito or you're doing like a really nice Mayolica or something like that, go for it. But as far as like production pottery where you're making like a ton of mugs, it would just take forever to do that, to pull it off the mug every time, right? I don't know about you, but like a mug in my area, and I live in like a really expensive area, like a Seattle area, a mug in our area, it's just a functional mug, you know, not sgraffito, not super fancy. A mug like that goes for, like just a standard mug, like one that I'd sell, goes for like 15-20 bucks, right? You've got to think about that. If you put a handle on something and it takes 10 minutes to put a handle on a mug, like if you were to pull from the mug, and maybe 10 minutes is too much, maybe like 7 minutes or something. I mean, you're never gonna buy that time back, right? It's just not worth it. So that's a decision you have to make. If you're making nice artsy mugs, sgraffito, painting on them, you know, doing underglaze and stuff, it might be beneficial to spend more time on the handle and to put a fat handle on there, pull it out, make it super nice. But if you're making mugs for people to use every day, you know, if someone spends 15-20 bucks on a mug, they're more likely to use it every day than they are something that they spent $50-$70. I've seen mugs for $100. I mean, yeah, they look super nice, right? But I'd be afraid to use the dang thing. So, my whole goal with making ceramics is putting things in the hands of people so that they can use them every day. Yeah, you can buy stuff at IKEA. You can spend $2 on a bowl. You can spend $1.50 on a mug, right? Brand new. Made by a machine, right? But you buy one of my mugs, you buy one of my bowls, you know that it was made by me because you're buying it from me, right? And it holds a special quality if you do that, right? You know that you know my process. I put my videos on the internet. People see my process. They know my process. It's not as simple as you know, going through a factory, slip casting. You know, all these methods that might be. It might result in a more uniform or better looking. I don't know about better looking, but you know, product. But there's no soul in it. You know, nobody touched it. It's not from somebody. My work is from somebody. And I'm not like super creative about decoration or any of that. But I price my stuff fairly. You know, I'm not charging $50 for a mug that I put a handle on, fired, you know, put glaze on, all that. If I was going to decorate and if I was a good artist in that aspect, then I would charge for my time, right? But yeah, you know, handmade ceramics isn't for everybody. And I know that. And there's no way that you can appease everybody, right? So... anyway, diatribe over. Let's go ahead and put some of these handles on some mugs, right? First, I'm going to show you how to thumb off a mug. I thumb off my mugs, most of them. If I'm doing a batch of like fancier mugs that have a trimmed foot, then of course I trim them. But for the majority of my mugs, I just thumb the foot off. I throw them so that the bottom is quite thin, and then I don't have to trim them. And here's what that looks like. Okay, so I've got basically a whole bunch of mugs here, right? I threw a bunch the other day. So this is what they look like. They once they're ready, they just fall right off the bat. You can see I just pulled it right off the bat. Here's another one. Boom, just falls right off, right? It's been like 85 degrees here for like the last 3 days, which is super unusual for Seattle in May. But yeah, so thumbing off a mug, you just take it off of the bat, and then you run your thumb along the sharp edge that's left, right? And if you throw your mugs with this in mind, and I do, I use a trimming tool while it's on the wheel. You can look at some of my other mug videos to see what that looks like. But when you do that, the foot area here is pre-trimmed. And so there's just this sharp edge along the edge here, and you just run your thumb over it and it smooths it out. And then I use my stamp, which is over here and dirty, of course, like everything. So I'm just going to pick off some of this clay that's stuck in here. For some reason I just forget every time I use it to clean it off afterwards. Anyway, so this is my stamp here. It's just my initials, right? And then of course it's backwards on here so that when I stamp it in, it's the right way around, right? So on my mugs, I like to stamp on the outside. And I just do this as I thumb them off, you know. You see that? That's pretty good, right? It's just my initials. So I've got 13 mugs that I threw last night, and due to the weather they're already drying out. Usually what I do is I throw mugs, and then the next day I'll wire them off with a wiggle wire. And a wiggle wire is just a regular wire tool that that has been, like, I don't know, it's like a spring that's been pulled out, right? And I'll show you what that looks like, because I have a wet box that's entirely full of those mugs, and I'll go grab a few. All right, so when I'm able to cut them off of the bats, like pretend this one is freshly thrown. And here in Washington, it's usually so humid, you know, with all the rain and stuff, that it takes a few days for it to get to the point where it's ready to wire off. But with this heat that we've had, the summer heat in May, I just, you know, leave them overnight and they just pop right off, right? But basically all I would do is I'd take this wiggle wire, and I just saw it back and forth like this while I'm taking it off. And when I do that, it leaves markings like that. And it looks really nice when it's like that, right? So now that we have like thumbing off, which is just running your thumb around the edge, I mean, it's just so simple, right? We've got that covered. I will go ahead and show you what it's like to attach some handles. And let me grab another camera here and you can kind of see. Get some close up. Alright, so attaching handles, I don't know, it's pretty simple. I've got a bowl here that's full of some slip. It's kind of watery. That's all you need. You need a bowl of slip, you need your handles, and you need your mug. And a needle tool. A really dirty needle tool. I really should clean this stuff before I start filming videos, shouldn't I? Anyway. Alright, so what we got here, we got a mug. We've got our bottoms thumbed off. It's leather hard. The handles that I just extruded are more softer, but they'll work. After I attach handles on all my mugs, I pop them into the wet box. The moisture equalizes inside of there. It doesn't allow one thing to dry faster than the other. It just allows all the moisture to equalize. And a wet box is just, it's like a Costco tote, like the big black with the yellow tops, and basically all it is one of those totes with about 1.5 inches of plaster in the bottom, and then you just keep the plaster wet. Since the plaster is wet, it's constantly shedding moisture, and when you put that top on, it basically keeps a high humidity chamber for storing stuff in. And anything that you put in there is going to stay the same moisture level as it is when you put it in, right? It's not going to dry out. It's not going to get more moist unless you spray it. So anyway, I put all my stuff in there. Usually after I throw it, if I can't put handles on it right away, it works good for just storing that kind of stuff. And then after I put the handles on, I'll put it in there for maybe a day or two, and then I'll pull them out and I'll put them on wear boards and let them dry normally. And that helps a lot with the cracking. I don't put wax after I attach the handles or anything. They just tend to stay nice. Anyway, so for my mugs, I have my mark on the outside of the foot here. So I have two choices, right? I can have it so the handle's here and my mark is facing outwards while somebody is drinking, or I can put it here and the marking is facing the person while they're drinking. I like that. I like the mark on the outside. It's a reminder that that's made by a person, right? And who better to remind than the person that's drinking out of it? So I almost always make it so that my handle is here, my mark is here, so when somebody brings this to their face, they put it down, they see a mark there, right? That's more personal than putting it on the bottom. I just prefer it that way, right? These are just like little things that when you're, I don't want to say designing because that sounds too clinical, but when you're thinking about something that you're making, and you should always think about stuff that you're making, right? when you're thinking about something that you're making, these little details kind of pop into your head, right? And so this is just one of those details that pops into my head when I'm thinking about it. And sorry, left-handed people, when you drink out of one of my mugs, you're going to be telling other people who made it. But yeah. Anyway, so to start, I just since I know I'm going to be putting my handle 90 degrees from here, I just start there, and let's see, I'll mark right here 90 degrees, and I'll just start scratching, and I scratch right here just above this little divot here that I throw into my pots, into my mugs, and then I'll put another towards the bottom where the base of the handle is going to go, right? So before I start messing with my handle, I'll go ahead and I'll take some slip, put it in those scratched areas, and these mugs are a little dry. I couldn't avoid it due to the weather, so when I have a handle here, what I'll do is I cut off one side against like a surface here, and I'll just push against that, and what it does is it makes kind of an angled area here, and I just kind of touch it up, and then I'll bash it in a little bit so that it kind of spreads out, kind of curate that area, because you know that is the connection area, right? You want it nice and flat, you want it cupped out a little bit, and then go ahead and scrape it into it. And then I just put like a little dab of slip in there because the mug is already slipped. And then all I do is I push that into the mug, and I just make sure that that's a real nice connection there. And since clay is thixotropic, the more that you kind of tap it, the more it turns into a liquid, and it'll fill in those cracks on the mug, right? And that's kind of where the attachment is, okay? It might crack, not crack, but it might look like it's separated around the edges here after it dries, but you can be sure that that clay connection is solid, right? And then when you line up your handles, you want to line them up so that they are straight this way, right? But at the same time, you want to make sure that the handle looks good from the profile. Now, as far as handles go, I see a lot of funky handles out there, right, that are like sticking way outside of the mug. You know, even like a whole mug's width outside, or you know, like a weird like U shape. Don't mess around with that because it makes your mug so hard to use. Here is the rule of thumb, okay? When you're adding a handle to a mug, you want the handle to protrude no more than half the width of the mug, okay? So if you take this handle and you flip it around inside, it should only fill half the mug, okay? And that's the rule of thirds, okay? Half of the mug is a third, okay? I know that sounds weird, but half of the mug is a third. So this is a third, this is a third, and then the handle is a third. You don't want to go outside of that because your handle will then be hard to hold. Just imagine this full of liquid and your handle way out here. Your hand is always going to be wanting to tip over, right? But if your handle is right against the mug, within a third, it's going to feel good when you're holding it, okay? So that is what I do. No knock on people that make the crazy handles. They have a reason, but the reason is not a functional reason. They're not thinking of a person using the mug. The mugs that I see like that are usually what I call art mugs. Art mugs, whatever, whatever goes, right? But for a functional mug, that's what you want, okay? You want it to be functional. You want the person who's holding it to get enjoyment out of the mug. It's supposed to be something that they don't even notice, right? Anything that you do, you don't want somebody to notice, right? That means it's good. That's sad, but it means it's good, right? So if you do your job right, no one's going to notice. Another thing for my mugs, I want it to be able to sit flat, so the handle does not go above the rim. That helps with, in my bisque firings, I sometimes stack a rim to rim, and if the handle is protruding past the rim, then it's not gonna stack well. So there is a handle right there. That's a mug with a handle on it, and you can see the marking is right there, so when you're drinking from it, that's a little reminder, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and do a couple more. This is a different style mug. It's a little taller, but we will go ahead and it's a little drier too. So we're going to score here, score down here, put our slip on, and prep our handle. Gives us a nice little angle there to work with. Push it out. And when you push it out like this, it's basically you're making the connection point. No one's really going to notice this, but this wide connection point here, if it looks nice when you're making it, it's going to be one of those things that no one notices, but it just looks, it just feels right? You have to really analyze something in order to see like details like this after the fact. So just take this, press it in, line it up. It helps if you look at it kind of down like this, right? You can kind of see it's lined up. And then my connection points on the bottom, I just thumb them off. And I understand that my slip is a different color than the clay that I'm using here, but I use two different clays and they're both iron saturate clays. Once they're fired, they look pretty much identical, so it's not a big deal to use a different colored slip here. There you go. As you can see, right? 1/3, perfect. Okay, not perfect, but close enough. Let's do another one of these ones. These are these took some damage in the wet box. I've got a bunch of reclaim in there too that it just dried so fast in these sunny days that I had to put it in the wet box. Knocked up against these, but alright. Score. Slip. Squeeze it out a little bit there at the top. Mushroom it, I guess. I don't know, some people say mushroom. I don't know, it doesn't look like a mushroom to me. Score. Just a little bit of slip. And push it in. Line it up. Looks good. Push it on. And then if you get your handle attached like this and the profile isn't good, right? So if that profile isn't good, go ahead and adjust it out, right? There's no rules. It's clay. Except for the 1/3 rule. Don't violate that, please. If you want somebody to use your mug, if you want somebody to use your mug every day, don't violate rules of functionality. Okay? There it is. Gonna go in the wet box. That's a 3-finger handle right now. And there's enough room there for shrinkage for it to be a 3-finger handle when it's done as well, after it's fired and shrink. So anyway, that is putting handles on mugs. I hope that helps. That's kind of all my secrets to mug handles. I don't know, now I gotta do the rest of these. And there's a lot of them. So anyway, I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm gonna do the rest of these mug handles, and I will catch you guys later. Thank you for watching.